I started doing a diploma in art college in Malaysia. I was doing fine arts, and painting was actually my favorite. Painting was my first choice, sculpture, and then printmaking. So I couldn't decide what I would like to focus on for my last year, and because I just hated the painting tutor. I love sculpture, especially metal sculpture. However, I realized that it's not something I would like to handle for a long time because it's very heavy and my skin seems to be very sensitive towards the welding. So that left printmaking. And I make a spontaneous decision. The last few seconds when I was looking at the form before I had to submit it, and I just decided, okay, printmaking. So that's how it all started. So when I started printmaking, like everyone else, I struggle with the messiness, ink everywhere, on my arms, on my face, on my shirt. It was disaster. But however, I really enjoyed it after a while. I enjoy using the tools. I just love the process after a while. So the messiness just slowly took some time to overcome it and be better at it. So that was how I started printmaking. I went to Singapore to do my degree in fine arts. Again, focusing on printmaking. So when I was doing my degree, my main influence or reference artist was Escher. It wasn't so much about the very mathematically structure for his work, but the flow, the sort of ambiguous, confusing space, the flow, the movement that brings your eyes around and keep you going and going. Those are the things that I really love about his work. So that too, they were two of my final prints. I did a few more, slightly different from this. So these ones, they were about 6 layers of monotypes on each print. And each layer, I will have those little letters. They were made of cardboard and threads. And I can place them differently, different composition, and they're movable, so I can always change how I want to place them for each layer. So every time I do one layer, I'll leave it to dry, and then next day I soak the paper again and then come back to it to print the second layer, and then respond to the first layer, and then place the letters differently. So these are what I did for my BA. And after my BA, I started working in Singapore Tyler Print Institute, short form for STPI. It was called Tyler Graphics from New York. And from there, it was a great experience. It was very hard work. I get to meet lots of different artists, work with lots of different artists. So the artists who did their residency in STPI, they were not printmakers, and most likely they don't do printmaking or have very little experience in printmaking. That's one of the ethos that the studio has, is that they want to work with artists who are not printmakers so that they come out with really creative ideas to challenge the printmakers and the paper makers. So they come up with really crazy ideas. Sometimes we have to find many ways to overcome problems to make things happen. And that was obviously, that was my very, very first experience working with artists. It was very challenging, and watch how artists respond to the technique and what we could do. So I worked there for 2 years. While working there, I sort of, after a while, I sort of quite tired of printmaking. Like some of the very strict discipline, have to get things right, the very attention to details the workshop requires. Sometimes it can be very boring and sort of robotic. Because the standard is so high, they don't allow to have the sort of human touch in the work sometimes. I find that a bit tiring or boring after a while. But however, there's still something about printmaking that I really like, but I didn't know what it was. So therefore, I decided to do my MA, is to explore that, to sort of give myself time to think and to explore what is this thing that I still like about printmaking, but I still couldn't really point it out yet. So when I was doing my MA, I came to Bristol to do my MA. I didn't know what I was going to do. I couldn't propose a project, what I wanted to do. I just came and have entirely new life experience and try to absorb the environment and learn from it. And I just started making lots of little, some small prints, sketches, drawings, all sorts of little things, just trying out different things. And somehow they're all related to some sort of layers. Obviously, the things that I always interested in my practice is the architecture elements like doors, windows, paths, stairs. So I see them as gateways, a boundary to the next destination, or a space unknown yet to be revealed. So, and what I'm really interested is not the form of these things, but it's the experience of experience in front of these things, such as the anticipation of the surprise behind the door, behind the window, further along the footpath. Is, yeah, that's the things that I'm really, really interested in, revealing the unknown. So so my tutors, looking at my work and suggested, maybe you should go for a walk at Jurassic Coast. Have a look at the layers of the lands, the rocks, the geographic, the history. So I just thought, okay, maybe I'll just go and have a look. So on this slideshow, this particular slide, only the one on the right-hand top is from Jurassic Coast. That one is Lyme Regis. The other two, they are actually from Pembrokeshire. So yeah, that's the sort of the time, the space through time, sort of reviewing the rocks, which I sort of interesting, but I wasn't sure what I can use this in my work. But however, my first walk along Jurassic Coast, these are the ones that have really strong impact in my work later on. So the confusing signpost on the left with the style, I'm not sure how many of you know about this. Style is something really unique in this country. I've never seen this in other places. And when I see things like style or a gate along the footpath, to me they give me a sense of hope, the shine of brightness that I get through these, and then it will reveal a new space. and I will continue my journey, and I'm closer to my destination. So that is a sense of it I always get from style. Of course, it might be very exciting, but at the same time, I don't know what's coming from the other side. And that particular one on the picture on the left is that you can see the two arrows at the top. They were pointing at two different directions, but they didn't really tell you where they're going. And the field was so big, that direction was very confusing, basically. So I kept walking back and forth in this open field, and I couldn't find my way out, which was very, very frustrating, because I was born and grew up in Kuala Lumpur, in the big city. I've never been to a place like this and walk in an open field. So I really couldn't find my way out. And I realized that after a while, I start looking on the grass, on the land, to see traces of people's movement. Traces of people's movement, and see what's the obvious, is there any obvious path or marks that people are making? Therefore, that could be the way out. So that was what guided me. And same goes to that a big area of mud. I know I needed to get through this area of mud, but I wasn't sure which one is the best way. So again, I started to look at traces of footprints and where it's a safer place and more accessible to get through this area. So by the way, when I was doing these walks, I was on my own. So I just have to find my way out. So that was quite an interesting experience, which informed my work later on. So after all these things, this experience, it was very inspiring. I came back with lots of lots of inspiration, information, and photographs. I wasn't sure what to do about it yet. And then reminded me of Alice in Wonderland, where she encountered this crossroad with lots of confusing signposts. And she followed one eventually, and then it just disappeared. So that also happened when I was in the middle of the open field, because at one point I was following some footprints, obvious footprints, that almost become a path, and slowly they just disappear in the middle of the field. I didn't know where I should be going. And from all this experience, I start to realize that I was looking at the traces of human movement, and they are prints that made by humans into the land, the nature. And these prints, they change over time, either with overlaying of traces, overlaying of footprints, they slowly become a path, or they just change, the shape just change over time. So it sort of reminded me of how we usually print, from the plate to the final print. Things change over time as you overlaying different layers of print on top of one, and the image start to change, or the plate or block start to fall apart, your marks start to become different. It become a process that I actually really enjoy, like a traveling process. So this particular one, Tabaimo, she is a video artist from Japan. She did a residency in Singapore. I think her work was the one was most inspiring for my practice, is that she looked at what we could do at the paper making and printmaking. And then she sort of come up ideas and combining both techniques really well and created a body of work. And this is one of the piece. Sort of deals with the layering of paper and printmaking together, and it just peel off and reveal what's underneath. And she, her interpretation of the technique is so inspiring that it stays in my mind for very long, but I didn't know what to do with it. Oh, what happened? Oh, yeah, I didn't know what to do with that. And then slowly after the walk, all these things came together. And this was my first piece of work for my MA, which was included in the final grad show. So instead of using printmaking as my medium, I realized that it becomes a storytelling. I'm more interested in the process itself, the whole storytelling process from plate to the print, from A to B, as the journey itself. So I didn't know what to do with the technique. So instead of that, I used my photographs and I cut out all the so-called gateways, like the paths, the windows, sometimes the opening, and it leads to the next photograph underneath, and then so on and so on, and usually end up with sometimes a brick wall, a window, a door. And also, by the way, you will see a few of these kind of work later on, and they are all tend to be black and white or quite muted color, just because each layer of pictures, they were taken in different location with different weather conditions. So the color or the atmosphere, they were really different. So if I lay them together with its original color, each layer start to speak very different language, and they start to shout at each other. They don't come together as a piece. So therefore, I have to either make them black and white or muted colors. So I've made a body of work that are like this, but I thought the first one is very significant. And when I'm a bit lost, I always come back to this piece of work. It sort of reminded me where I come from, how I started. So I finished my MA in 2011, and then I moved to London in 2013. I got a full-time printmaker work as an additional printmaker in London. Additioning printmaker. And I sort of were not sure what to do with that, because I was so used to just walking on the footpath and taking pictures. And so I took pictures in Bristol and lots of random journeys as well. So when I first moved to London, I didn't know what to do. And after a while, I just thought, maybe I should just do something that respond to London, the urban environment. So TFL is a lot, appears a lot in my work after the ones that after 2013. So this particular piece was, I was on my journey going to Tom Hammack artist studio, his own print studio in Bermondsey. So this one is actually Bermondsey Station. And I want to show the variety of traveling in London, and also the layers of traveling options where you have to change your tube or train TFL to get to somewhere. And this particular piece, all the pictures, layer of photographs, they were taken in Bermondsey. So I've done quite a few of the London-based one. They were obviously more concrete and lots of train tracks, some stairs and things like that. They tend to be a lot more chaotic in a way. So I'm gonna show this piece. So this one is the more muted one. So this one was inspired by a walk in Lake District. The reason why I chose to show this piece is because I have took a few pictures of different angle of the piece. I tend to forget to do that with most of my work. And some of them, they're too busy and too chaotic. And this one I thought is easier to show the layers. So for me, it's very important to have space in between each photograph because they signify the space when I travel from one place to the other. So from A to B, the next destination, revealing the unknown. So that is the physical space that I enjoy, which I find that very exciting, and I want to show that in my work. So these ones, these collage photographs, in between each photographs, they will have some foam core cut into different sizes, pieces, stack them up. I know it's not very obvious here because I camouflage the foam core with photographs as well. So they sort of blend in and make the journey smoother rather than you see something white or black that stops your eyes. And apart from that, I also try to do different things. And actually all this while I'm still working with different artists, and they inspire me in different ways. So they may not be very experimenting, they may not be very experimental, doing crazy things. But every time when I work on their work or their prints, they reminded me how fun things could be, reminded me how I actually still enjoy printmaking. I want to make something. So these prints, I didn't know what to do if I want to make a print. So I started off just using my old images, make a few polymer plates and just print them and see what happened and work on them. So as you can see, the left-hand side, that image, I used the first image from the first photograph, 3D photographs that I made. So again, I'm back to that and try to remind myself the journey. So these pieces, for me, is because they were made, the original piece were made quite a few years. I made them in 2011. So it's about 7 years apart. It's kind of, when I look at the image or the piece itself, they somehow reminded me vaguely about the journey, but not quite the same as before, or not as vivid as before. And I realized that no matter how much you enjoy something, then let's say the journey, the memory of it fading over time, it changes, and my brain seems to interpret it in a different way. It becomes something different. So I thought, I'll make this as a memory, as a journey in my memory instead of the actual journey. So I make them, so as these ones, with the edges and the holes, I burn them. And I really enjoy when I was burning them, the burn marks, I just let them spread itself until it sort of stopped burning. So I see them as if when I was walking along the footpath, I'm leaving my traces on the land, and the nature change the shape of it as the fire burns. So that's how I came up with these 3 works. But I was a bit bored after a while with the printmaking side of it, because most artists I work with, they do a lot of polymer etching. It's not, for me, it's not very exciting. So I still enjoy the printmaking process, which after layers of printing, things change at the end, and the finished product is different from where it started. So that's something that I really enjoy, but I couldn't do this for these pieces, so I stopped doing that after these 3 pieces. And I also try making some books. I actually very enjoy the book form, because I can see the potential for my work to fit in. Whereas you flip the pages, you reveal the next page, the next story. And so I also burn the pages, like as treating it as a gateway, and also I let it spread itself. So the one on the top is inspired by the contour lines on the map, and also the sort of footpath and traces left on the pages. Whereas the one at the bottom, they have the same elements, but with lots of little drawings and text, and make it like a map that goes round and round. So you can see it closes as a tiny square, and you can open up, and eventually you can open it as a ball, and you can flip it any way, and they all sort of link to each other with arrows pointing in different directions to tell you where to go, but they just go round and round, and it doesn't lead you to anywhere. Those confusing maps, I tend to make them when I just want my brain to wander. It's very it's actually quite hypnotizing in a way, and meditating. So before COVID, I was doing quite a lot. I'm still making quite a lot of those photographs, work, and taking pictures in different places. And when COVID happened, obviously the lockdown and the restrictions, so I no longer go out much or taking lots of pictures from different places. So the whole traveling journey is very different. And it's also quite expensive to make those pieces. Sending the pictures to print, they are quite expensive. So it forced me to rethink my own practice. And all this while, I still want to make prints, especially working in Popper's Press. I don't print in Popper's Press, by the way. I do finishing work, so I will touch up the prints, make them better if they're not good enough, clean them. While actually working on them, little things like these, how the ink layer and the color changes also kind of determine how I need to touch them up to make them look exactly the same. So the changes of color when things are overlaying, I find that very inspiring, because each artist use color differently, and the way how the image and the translucentness of the color layer, I really enjoy that. And also working with Tom Hammock. Tom Hammock is a painter, so the way he layered his color is very interesting, and the way he used the color, and he tend to have lots of layers on his wood block. So I actually got quite a lot of experience working with these artists. I like the way how they use the medium as image making rather than making a print. So because of COVID, I start to rethink my practice and I want to make more prints. And I don't want to spend too much money, like making copper plates. And I remember in early 2020, I went to the Picasso show in RA. What's it called? Art on Paper. And there was one particular section during the World War. The text, the description about that section was saying that because of the World War, materials was kind of a bit limited. So Picasso started to explore what he can find in his studio or his home or his surroundings. So he started using whatever paper or newspaper. And I find that really inspiring and fun at the same time. So I came up with these collagraphs. So this was the first one that I did. This was kind of similar to the previous 3D photograph piece, the one called The Wandering Wanderer. But it was based on a few photographs I took in Lake District. I just change it and interpret the place differently, but using carborundum and drying point. So obviously it's going to be a lot more chunkier because of the texture. And I thought, yeah, I'll play around with textures and overlaying with inks and see what happens, because that's what I enjoy a lot while working on other people's work. And that's also the thing that I really enjoy about printmaking, the journey. So I'm back to printmaking, enjoying the journey of from plate to print. And this one, the one on the left is one of the 3D photographs I made. So this piece reminded me of when I was walking along the coastal path. There was certain part of the path where had some landslide, when the path was collapsed. So I sort of have to find my way around it to get to the gate or the next style. So usually it's sort of challenging, and also again look around and see what other traces of people have been walking. So that's the original work about, and because the print I made was based on that, and I started to recall my memory. What was that about? That piece, that experience of the walking. So I have a slightly different interpretation of it. So the blue, so for these prints, I tend to highlight the paths or the door, which you will see later on. So this one, I highlighted one particular path in blue. It's almost like there are lots of paths that lead to the gate. However, this was the one path. The path was the path that was taken. Yeah. So that particular piece, there was three collagraph plates on cardboard to create that. Next one. So I've been going through a lot of my old photographs and see what I can do and what can I do with it and what kind of memory they recall. And this particular one, I went to visit my friend Simon in Cornwall. And that little shed is actually his studio. It's nothing really exciting. And when we were approaching, I didn't even know that was his studio. But when I see something, a shed like this, it always makes me wonder what is behind that door. And when we were approaching, that anticipation became stronger. So that's something that I want to highlight. Obviously, that's the path, and the door, it's the main thing. So when I was making this piece, when I was printing it at first, the color I used was quite similar to the first one, the quite green, the bright green, fresh green. However, I got a bit bored with that kind of color palette because I did another 2 pieces that were similar with the similar color palette. But I didn't know what to do yet. But I was still trying different colors. It just happened that coincidentally, the three plates that I make for this image, they happen to be black mount boards. It's just something I found in my studio with the right size that I want to try something. They wasn't intentionally having black mount board as my plate, because they're actually quite hard to see what I'm doing. Anyway, because they were black, so when I do the inking, I can see the color shining vibrantly on black. So it makes me want to try something different, which I've never tried before, which is making a dark print. So that's how it started, this print. I like the fact that because it's dark everywhere and I have something that is glowing, it's the anticipation and the hope coming through. I think that's something about COVID and the lockdown that makes me look at things differently. I think, yeah, unconsciously that's coming into my work. And then this is another dark print that I did. And for that particular scene, we were staying at a friend's place in September for pet sitting, and looking out the bedroom window, that is what I see. This is what I saw. During the day, obviously I could see more activities, but the night was more interesting in a way, because I can stare in the dark for very long and see if there's anyone coming through. I can see lights from the clouds, lights coming through behind the trees. It shows a very different scene and it tells very different stories. So again, the path is in a more brighter color. So that's this is the stages of my thinking process. So I took a photograph of the to me the most intriguing scene, and then from there I did a drawing, and that drawing was based on daylight, so that I can think about the colors more, the color separation. I usually use a drawing as a guideline for color separation and the layers of different the layers on different plates, what comes next. And for the colograph plate, that is the second, that is the second plate. In total, the final print actually have four layers, 4 plates to produce the final print. So I'm going to show a few different prints that I make at the same time as well. So this is one of them. This one has, I think, 3 layers. When I was making this piece, it's based on Lake District. Is that there is a footpath, but at the same time, I added the trees there just to block the path, as if that's maybe the end of the path, but maybe not. There's something behind. And that's another one. So yeah, when I was making this piece, I just enjoy thinking about the colors, laying on each other, changing the colors to make them speak to each other. And most of the time, I don't know how many plates I needed to do to make for a print. I would look at them, look at the test prints and respond to them. If I'm not very happy, then I'll make another plate to make things work until I'm happy. So yeah, I think that's all for my work. So for my practice, you can see they changes a lot from the beginning until now. How do I stop sharing? I couldn't get my cursor. So yeah, things change a lot. I'm not sure where I'm heading to at the moment, but I will stick to what I'm interested in. Yeah, again, the architecture elements, the gateway, and revealing the unknown. It's always the things that I'm interested in. Yeah, so I'm happy to try different things. If I have new ideas, I will try them and see what happens. So yeah, I think that's my presentation.